river. So here's a nice shot, panorama that Germany has of the community here. And you can see the types of housing and the clustering of the houses. And pretty much you live in the same neighborhood with everyone you know. And you all see each other, and there's no anonymity. There's very little anonymity in the Santa Lucia region. There's a couple of girls in a dugout canoe, and canoeing is one of the ways they get around, obviously, and fishing and hunting. These might be candidates for an attack of greasy sickness at some point later in their lives. Here we have a heterogeneous symptom cluster involving headaches, anxiety, fear, anger, nausea. This is how it's described in the literature. I didn't get to do interviews myself, but I think that's going to be a very important part of future work. And which are followed by a type of transposition in which the agitated individual attacks others or property and may run off and need to be subdued. In most cases they do, at least the ones that I've seen. Reports go back at least to the mid-19th century. And this was a point in which the mosquito and the mayanga were coming in much more contact with each other. But the origins are unclear. I have an idea or two. We'll have to throw out some more things maybe if you have ideas. And there are these outbreaks, as I mentioned, that can be contagious, and a number of communities were experiencing these over the last 10 years, I think. Oops, did I miss something? So, again, it can last from minutes to hours. I don't know if you saw anything longer, Jeremy.
More than an hour.
People will code switch while they're in it, so they'll start speaking Spanish when they're possessed, or they'll start speaking English. At least that's what's reported. I don't know if you experienced any of that, but there is a sense of talking to someone, a lot of it. Said to begin when the devil appears to carry his victim away. Sukia is a local healer, curandero, figure that can treat this. There are known treatments for this, but I don't think there's a Sukia in your community, was there? No.
Curanderos.
Okay, curanderos, so people with some knowledge and healing knowledge. And then here's an example of a quote from Dennis's work. Captain Neal was a huge black man, foul-smelling. I saw blood in front of my eyes. "Let's go," he said. I felt like I would die. He wanted to carry me around, and I ran, but with my eyes shut like this. It was terrible. I was weak. Some more experiences. Something like a man comes, a white man, a Spaniard. It's interesting how they always point out the ethnicity of these. They're outsiders, it seems, too. Riding a horse. And this figure, the horseman, is so prevalent in the what do we call this? The oneria of Latin America, the dreams and nightmares and visions of evil. You hear this all over, the black-clad horseman who is this evil figure, and it sounds like the hacendado, no? And it sounds like the owner of the hacienda coming out to take care of things. Carried me down to the beach, 6 hours more, I was gone, people didn't know where I was. He was a handsome man, he didn't hit me, and yes, he did it to me. I mean, he's had sex with me. So there is a sense of being sexually violated or willfully engaging in this with this person. White person, khaki trousers, carrying a pistol. He takes you into the water to a river, far away, he carries you. You're carried away. These girls are carried away in many ways. And we can kind of talk about what would kind of a typical progression in terms of a few photos that Maria and Jeremy took. And here we see a woman who's now started in the trance stage. She's lumbering around the village and will pick up any object she can find and use to bang on things. And so people will scramble and try to get stuff out of their way. They'll hide the machetes and these kinds of things. They'll try to destroy property. They'll knock over outhouses, pull houses apart, and people have to kind of subdue them. And that's what's going on here. They run down to the river. A lot of times, people have to chase them and pull them out of the river. And they remain in a somewhat altered state of consciousness where they kind of lay down and recover. And this is a fairly typical overview of what happens, and Jeremy can add to that. Here's a picture of a case that's starting, and it's starting in the house. I think it's interesting. I bet a lot of these start in the house. And I wonder if what's going on in that. I mean, we don't get to do the interviews here. I did in Honduras. That's something that I'd like to do more of. But she might have been sleeping, or something happened in the house. She comes out and starts. So here's a video. Whoops, it didn't work. Let's see. This is a somewhat.
So you can click on it again.
I don't know that this sounds that important, except that there was a rooster crowing to tell you that it was probably morning.
Oh, that doesn't.
No, it doesn't matter.
It is, no.
All right, because they don't crow around. And so this is a different person. This is not the same as the one in the previous picture. And this is a real grainy video, but I think it gives you a sense of, people in the community now know what's going on, or at least some people do, and they're kind of following her around, keeping an eye on her, picking up stuff. And she'll go on like this for 10 or 15 minutes, sometimes longer, sometimes less. And that banging noise really seems to be associated with an outbreak. And we just start hearing clap, bang, at least from the videos I've seen. And then the community gets a little agitated, kind of comes out and watches. There's a little fun and games with the kids sometimes as they try to catch her or try not to get hit by her or prevent her from doing things. Second video. Let's see if I can get this one. Okay, young girl, looks prepubescent. I don't know about life history and biology in this community, so I don't know how old to estimate that she is. Looks like she could be about 10 or 11.
10 or 11.
And she is in full greasy sickness here. That's the sound I was referring to. So the shaking of the head, no, I don't want to go with you, Megan. This is what we saw in some of those other quotes. I don't want to go, no, I'm not going, okay. And they will sometimes talk at this point. And they'll call names out, and they'll call Jeremy. And then the idea is that he'll start to have an attack too. And so they try to call names to get other people to do it too. It's almost like being, I don't know if they're trying to get them to do it, but it results in it. So I'm going to fast forward through this a little bit so we can kind of get a sense of how it develops. This is what this works. And I'm just 5 minutes away here. So, bang, 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 she's going around the community. Folks are keeping an eye on her. She's going to tire herself out after a little bit. I think that's probably one of the determinants of how long these last. But you can see a brother or a male kin in the community kind of following around, watching. She continues, her eyes appear to be closed, but obviously navigating around pretty well. Here she's the running taxon. Off she goes. So here's something I can bang on things with. And down to the river. I think this one goes down to the river. The concern is, because this is a...
this is the porch of her own house here.
And it's kind of the post-attack phase where they slowly come to and tend to isolate, tend to get and try to be by themselves. Just go a little further here. She's continuing to kind of fight with those who are holding her, and she'll kick them or kick the wall every once in a while. And then we'll see her just a few minutes later, kind of out of the situation and recovered, although with some kind of strange affect. And I thought this was going to get a little faster. So there she is, smiling and then not smiling and hanging out and back to normal. Just a little while later, as far as I know, right, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Here's a male that's undergoing an attack with greasy sickness. And you can see, if you had a couple males in your community that get into this, it's a major problem.
This is at his nephew's funeral.
Okay, so again, this stress, emotional period, that's what I wanted to ask you. I saw some pictures of the funeral. I wanted to ask you if there were any associated greasy attacks. So they continue to kind of work with him, and I think that's where I'll stop with these. You get a sense, though, and I think where I try to draw a picture with the language of the more cataleptic state. With this one, you can kind of see what's going on. You can kind of feel it with your body a little more, what it involves here. And I think it's back to that a little bit that I just want to kind of wrap things up with. The idea that, I'll maybe come back to this. They both have, and really quickly, the last two slides, they both have a number of things in common. And maybe using a little too much psychiatric language here, there's a kind of sense of affective dysregulation that when you have strong affect, you can't regulate it. It's something that gets beyond itself. The idea of being carried away is followed by a dissociative trance or state with motor and sensory conversion as a final common pathway. So it's either sensory or motor. You're either going to this hypermotor state or into a retarded motor state. And it's generally associated with acute social-emotional distress. Possession is generally the same idea. Affliction by evil spirits as an explanation, and it often indexes moral and existential vulnerability. These women are living in poverty, and if the husband goes off with another man,